Hi everyone, my name is Suze and I work with women to help them find total emotional fulfillment in their lives and deep satisfaction. So today is kind of part 2 of the video I started prior to this one. I did not intend on this being a 2-part video, but that is what it is. And I just move with spirit, move with the divine, the messages that come out. I have my outlines and my notes here of what I'm going off of. But as things come through and flow through me, I speak them and trust that they are what is needed to hear by the collective. So part 2 of breaking out of a lifetime of shame. Breaking out of a lifetime of shame. Shame. I love talking about shame. It's one of those big energies, much like anger and anxiety. Shame is right up there too, which really controls us, right? Really controls us. Your shame affects your self-worth. Your shame affects your value system in general about what you value, what's important to you in your life, and what you prioritize in your relationships. Shame, it affects your belief system because, again, belief of self, belief of what you are worthy of in the reality outside of you. Shame is the thing that causes us to settle for things that are less than what our heart actually desires because it's just a lot, right? And then shame with codependency. And that's kind of like a big one that I've really been journaling about and really creating a map for this whole shame speak on this channel. But shame around codependency, because there is a very intimate link between codependency and you hold this secret shame around this thing. And so you're linked to this person outside of you or situation or thing that is codependent. You're addicted and linked to this thing outside of you because it's very subtly and subconsciously underneath the surface giving you the thing that's feeding your shame. And you can't break free of it. Shame is all about addiction. So anyway, breaking out of a lifetime of shame. This has been something that I clearly have been working on for my whole life. And I know immediately, like when someone says, if someone were to ask me, and this has been literally my whole life, I've known what my big shame thing was about, right? That secret little thing that I wish was different about me, and the thing that's always so annoying about myself, that I don't like about myself, and the patterns and things that I keep on doing and I wish I could get out of. And I've known my whole life what my big shame thing was. And it's been a lifetime of trying to overcome that and trying to figure out all of the nooks and crannies of that so that I could be liberated from it, right? And shame is a long journey. Overcoming shame is many steps and layers to it. And as people work through shame, I don't think there's enough people talking about all the layers and steps of it. And so people get to a certain level of the shame and they think they've worked through it. And again, I'm speaking from experience, so I'm aware. You get to a certain point and you think you've liberated yourself from the shame and you think that you're doing the right thing and you're on the right path and you're doing all the right things and I'm free. I don't shame myself for that thing anymore and I've accepted that. That's just who I am and that's just part of me and I don't hold any shame about it. But you do. And it will come back around to haunt you later. Maybe 20 years later, like in my case, 20 years later, it'll come back to haunt you and say, you haven't done all your work around this thing. You're still linked to this shame thing in some certain way. There's a layer deeper. And that is the nature of healing. You only know what you know. And you can only respond to your life with your current level of knowing and awareness and consciousness. And that's where self-acceptance and self-forgiveness comes in of, you can look back and say, oh my God, I can't believe I did this thing back here and I made this decision and wow. And you, again, may shame yourself. But the truth of the matter is, go back to the level of awareness, the level of frequency that you were in back then. What were the belief systems that you still were operating under back then? What was your sense of self-awareness? How aware of yourself were you? You were not as self-aware then as you are now. So what you were doing back there was, again, and I've said this before, particularly around the mother wound, You were only doing the best that you could with the resources and the knowledge and the awareness that you had at that time. And that's where forgiveness comes in. You were only operating with the system of self, the operating system of yourself that you had accumulated and grown into at that time. And when we come at forgiveness, again, I'm going off here into forgiveness world now. I promise I'll get back to the subject for today. That's what forgiveness is, whether it be with ourselves or with someone else, is recognizing they were only operating at the level of awareness they were at that point that they made that mistake, right, back then. And as long as they are communicating and their energy is authenticating their words of they're apologizing now and coming to you and recognizing, having that awareness, that a growth and awareness from back then of the mistake to now, forgiveness can flow very easily. Of course, forgiveness is a lot harder if there isn't that awareness or if you haven't had that verbal apology, clearly, but we're not talking about forgiveness today. I'm having some coffee. It's early morning for me as I'm recording these today, so I'm having my coffee. Speaking of coffee, has anyone tried mushroom coffee? I'm going to be trying that. Coffee is one of those things I have been on a love-hate journey with, and I've been recently just kind of in the space of like, you know what? There's a lot worse things in my life that I could be doing, and coffee is my little blankie of emotional comfort in the morning, so I'm going to embrace it for now. And that's kind of where I'm at in my coffee journey. I'm curious if anyone else has played around with other forms of coffee or what you feel about coffee. What does coffee mean to you psychologically, emotionally? Let me know. And how do you take your coffee? Actually, I'm curious. How do you take your coffee? The good thing about me is I don't put sugar in my coffee. So at least I got that going for me, right? So anyway, breaking out of a lifetime of shame. Let's get back to the subject for today. Breaking out of a lifetime of shame. This goes back to the mother wound. Going back to the mother wound, your sense of your emotional center in childhood is clearly your mother. And the place where you learn or don't learn how to regulate your emotions or how to stabilize yourself in a state of internal emotional chaos, those skills are learned or gifted to you or developed with the help and the support, the nurturance of your mother. That is the feminine energy, right? Feminine energy, it's entirely that nurturing. Feminine energy clearly is the emotional heart space energy. So growing up into an adult who struggles with regulating your emotions goes back to a childhood where maybe your mother was non-existent, or maybe your mother was emotionally unavailable and non-existent. Either or, whether it be physically unavailable or emotionally unavailable, the result is exactly the same. And then this grows up into a child who deals with a lot of anxiety. And again, I've done a lot of videos on anxiety. I'm not going to entirely go down that stream of thought right now, but the anxiety piece is part of this whole problem with the shame, okay? So going back to childhood with the mother, I have learned in all my research, psychological research of, and it came from, again, me trying to fix myself, right? Heal myself. I use the term fix loosely. Please don't crucify me on that. Of dealing with a mother who passed away at 3 and dealing with the emotional repercussions of not having my mother in childhood. So what I learned psychologically is that women in particular have 2 responses when you come from a childhood of emotional unavailability or physical unavailability of your mother, and then therefore lack of emotional your emotional needs being supported, emotional neglect, two things happen. You either choose the emotional eating road, which I feel like everyone talks about all the time, or sex. Those are the two responses of how you cope or how you deal with a childhood of emotional neglect and lack of emotional regulation skills being given to you by your mother. And think about it. Emotional eating, right? That's usually the one that's more talked about, and it's the more socially acceptable one, right? It has less stigma and sting behind it. The emotional eating part, it's a false sense of nurturing, right? Because first of all, you're giving yourself food, which is nourishment, nurturing, right? So you see the correlation there. And then the other thing that's interesting about these two responses, whether it be sex or food, they both involve the physical body. And what do we know about anxiety? Anxiety is a need for getting back into your physical body and out of your mind. Now, this is a complicated scenario. Hang on with me. Because for some people, on the more beginning stages of your journey of dealing with your anxiety and recognizing when you are in anxiety, when previously you may not have even recognized you were in a state of anxiety, you may not yet be aware enough. Oh, I just saw a dragonfly in my window. I love dragonflies. That's a message. Thank you. I receive it. For a lot of you, if you're in the beginning stages of recognizing your anxiety, you're not going to recognize the feelings in your body that your body is trying to tell you, I'm in a space of anxiety. And you may not recognize you're in a space of anxiety until your brain starts getting triggered and your mind starts going down this crazy town stream of thought of all these horrible things in the anxiety world that could potentially or are going to happen to me, fear of whatever else happening in the future down the road. You may not recognize the anxiety when it's energetically in the body until it's triggered in the mind. But the body knows. The body knows. Even though you might not be consciously aware of what's happening in your body because you're not self-aware enough yet, your body knows. So your body instantly sends you a message to do the thing that makes you think that you're soothing yourself, that makes you think that it's going to help regulate you. And I mean, to a certain extent it does. I'm going to get into that more later. Yes. And what it's doing is telling you to get back into your body. Notice what's happening in my body. It's like telling you, hello, hello, hello. You have these energies that are overwhelming you, and all of this nervous energy is building up, and we're in danger here. We're in danger. There's all this crazy town happening of energy. We need to release this energy. Please bring your attention back to your body so you can be aware of what's happening. And so it's really fascinating and intricate how the body then will trigger you into something that it's its own feeble little attempt to get you back into your body. Because sex clearly is very physical and very much getting you back into your body. And so is emotional eating. You're literally using your body quite intensely to eat something. But we then sabotage the whole process and miss the whole point of what actually is happening. We miss the whole point because then we use it as a thing of escape. You use it as a thing of escape, and we use it as a thing of validation. Oh boy. Can you see how we're getting into a slippery slope very close to shame now? So then we get into these habits, whether it be sex or food, which clearly holds a lot of shame, right? Clearly holds a lot of shame. Oh, I shouldn't be emotionally eating, right? And when I work with clients around intuitive eating, that's a lot of the work of restructuring, rewriting in the brain how a woman perceives food, and her emotional associations with food have to be rewired to have success with emotional eating and intuitive eating and really learning to eat allowing yourself to be emotional, but associating food and emotions in a very different and a very self-empowering way. And it's not about limiting or denying or restricting what you eat. It's learning to perceive food differently emotionally. And that's why it's so powerful and so sustainable, because you're working with your emotions instead of against your emotions. And then at the same time, you're getting out of that cycle of guilt, right? Like you do the thing and then you look back 20 minutes later, an hour later, the next day, and you're like, why did I eat that? And then maybe you even take it another step further and then you go to the gym to punish yourself for eating that thing last night. I mean, the shame just goes on and on and on. Okay? Then, of course, with the sex, I mean, it's blatantly obvious, right? You're not supposed to just randomly have sex. You're not supposed to cheat. You're not supposed to do all these things, right? There's so much about that, and that subject is really where I want to go on this channel, is with the sex and the emotional intimacy, the physical intimacy. That's where we're going. But I had to lay down this beginning piece of understanding of where this is all coming from. And this is all coming from an emotional need in childhood that was not met for whatever reason, doesn't matter. And again, I'm not blaming the mother, because what did I say about forgiveness earlier? She's only doing the best that she could with her own level of self-awareness, her own resources, and what was available to her in her journey at that time. But it is now the responsibility that we have to understand what happened back there, but then take responsibility for creating a new future for us. And in so doing, we are getting into legacy energy of redefining what adult life, emotional health, emotional fulfillment, and satisfaction looks like for our children, and teaching them that by example and by our gentle guidance with them, so that they can break these cycles. This is all feminine energy, ancestral cycles that we are breaking. So this is serious legacy work of breaking these feminine wounds that have been passed down for generations and generations, and it's affecting the men. I'm not going to get into that now. I'm going to leave this video here for now. I hope this video helped. If you found value, please do subscribe to help support my channel, get this message out to other people who need to hear it. And please let me know in the comments what you appreciated most about this video, what resonated, hit home the most for you. Thank you so much. I'm sending so much love to you all. Have a beautiful rest of your day. Bye-bye.